NBC Sports puts all the pieces together, blending a tradition rich in memories with innovation and the latest in television technology. Great moments come alive on NBC Sports.
This afternoon, most of you will see Don Mattingly and the New York Yankees try again against the California Angels. Last night, the Angels pulled out a come-from-behind victory over the Yankees in 12 innings. Or some of you will see the Chicago Cubs, led by Andre Dawson, battling the Atlanta Braves. Last night, the Braves, sparked by the National League's leading hitter, Gerald Perry, blanked the Cubs 4-0 behind Pete Smith. But first, NBC Sports presents Major League Baseball, an inside look. Brought to you by Vic Shavers. Feel the Vic difference. Vic Shaver for regular or sensitive skin. And by the Miller Brewing Company, sole sponsor of the U.S. Olympic Training Centers. It is an 83-degree sunny day in Anaheim, California. The crowd filing into Anaheim Stadium for our featured game of the day, matching the Yankees and the Angels. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Marv Albert. We greet you from just down the road from Disneyland. And coming up on the pregame, we'll be taking a close-up look at a new business that has emerged. Signatures for sale. Baseball players selling their autographs. But first, a quick check of what took place last night in games of note. First of all, here in Anaheim, the struggling Yankees suffered their 7th loss after leading with 2 outs in the 9th inning. A disheartening stat for the Yanks. It was Tony Armas hitting it out against Dave Righetti to tie the game, and the Angels went on to win 7-6-12. Yanks blew a 6-0 lead. Lou Pinella's Yankees now 5.5 behind Detroit. On this throwing error by Dale Swain, the Tigers beat Milwaukee 3-2-12, stopping a 3-game losing streak. Detroit remains 2 over Boston. Frank Viola failed in his second attempt at win number 20. Bo Jackson connected for a 3-run home run. Viola now 19-6. The Twins trail Oakland by 7. In the National, Sid Fernandez handcuffed the Giants, helped by plays like this by Len Dykstra. The Mets blanked the Giants 3-0. The Mets now 6.5 in front of Pittsburgh. As Jim DeShays had his no-hit bid into the 8th inning broken up on an infield single by Bobby Bonilla. DeShays settling for a 3-hitter. The Astros over the slumping Pirates 2-0. While the Western leading Dodgers, sparked by John Shelby's 2-run double and a 5-run 4th, knocked off the Phils 7-2 behind red-hot Tim Belcher. The Dodgers remain 4.5 in front. The most intriguing pickoff attempt of the night, Mike Maddox of the Phils giving it a shot, did not work. Well, this past week, it was another news-making stretch for the Yankees. In effect, it was business as usual. We'll be back with a man who spent 6 years with the Yankees during their glory days of the 70s. Back to talk with Yankee batting coach Chris Chambliss in a moment. Back to Anaheim. The Yankees and the Angels are getting set for game 2 of their 3-game set. Most of you will see that game, and some of you will see the Cubs and the Braves. And for the Yankees, it has been another stormy week. Coming off the heels of lackluster play, it was a week that began with Don Mattingly lashing out at George Steinbrenner and the Yankee organization. Mattingly saying, "You get no respect when you play for the Yankees." He said, "You get money, but no respect."
Hey, the things that I said came out of my heart yesterday, and I can't help it. I told some guys with the paper, I said, you know, when I came over to my locker, I had no intentions of saying anything, and the stuff started coming out of my mouth, and really, I guess it started coming out of my heart.
Well, George Steinbrenner says Don Mattingly is simply frustrated because he's had a disappointing season, and Don was reluctant to come on to discuss this subject. So we are joined by a man who spent several years listening to these type of outbursts while a member of the Yankees, batting coach Chris Chambliss. What is your reaction to Mattingly's statements?
Well, like anybody else on our ball club, he's frustrated, and certainly he's going to, lash out at the owner. That's happened all through the years I played, and that's never going to change.
Is there a lack of respect for the players from the Yankee organization?
Of course not. We got our ball players here because they're major league ball players, and we treat them that way. And some of the comments that you hear from George in the papers sometimes are unwarranted, but all he's trying to do is to get them to win.
And there was a startling announcement the other day that supposedly Reggie Jackson is considering a return, that George Steinbrenner was considering a proposal by business manager Bill Goodstein. At 42 years years of age. He hit .220 last year with Oakland. How do you react to that?
Well, it's pretty much like the way I came back this year. I took it at bat, and it was no preparation, and I didn't have any spring training, and Reggie hasn't had spring training, so I doubt if there's any truth to that at all.
That's right. You went 0 for 1. You struck out. Would Reggie be embarrassed, do you think?
Oh, certainly he would. Anybody would. If I had to do it over again, I wouldn't have done it. Without proper preparation, you just can't play this game.
Chris made his return at age 39. Incidentally, what is a Chris Chambliss autograph worth these days?
Not very much.
Not very much. Chris being tough on himself. Well, coming up, we will focus in on a new side business for past and present major leaguers. Signatures for sale.
This Olympic baseball close-up is brought to you by new Extra Strength Brute 33 antiperspirant and deodorant. Barry Larkin, shortstop for the Cincinnati Reds, recalls the 1984 Olympics.
It was a great feeling. We had the opening ceremonies in L.A., and then we had the opening ceremonies for the baseball team. And we had 100,000 people at Dodger Stadium yelling USA, 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 and something that's like fulfilling a boyhood dream. And it was just a great feeling.
Larkin came to the majors in 1986. Now he leads National League shortstops and homers, and he made the All-Star team this year. He's got fond memories of his Olympic experience.
I can remember when we finally did get to L.A., it was about 4 or 5 of us staying in one room at the Olympic Village, and we were supposed to get our sleep, but we stayed up all night and messed around and went down and got to eat 24 hours a day. So we had quite a few good times.
Some people say baseball is boring. It's not boring. It's a great game. It's the best game. It's the best of all the sport. And it's a great game to go to because, in baseball, it's the only sport where if the ball lands in the stands, you get to keep it. No other sport. Take stock car racing, for instance. Cars flip out, land in the stands. You don't see people going, "What is that, a Camaro? I got that." And it's honest. It's totally honest because when you go to a baseball game, in Yankee Stadium, you order a hot dog, you got a $20 bill, you give it to the guy beside you, he passes a $20 bill to someone, it goes all the way up the row, your hot dog and the change comes back to you. It's the only place in New York where if you give somebody a $20 bill, it comes back to you. So it makes people honest.
Never thought of that. For as long as baseball has been played, the hobby of collecting sports memorabilia has provided pleasure to millions of fans. But in the last few years, the hobby has blossomed into a multi-million-dollar industry. Now, one of the most profitable and booming aspects of that business is collecting autographs. And every week at card shows nationwide, current stars and ex-players from Hall of Famers to backup catchers are showing up with a price tag on their pen. In some ways, it has become a cold, cruel, calculating world of signatures for sale.
You can't see a stamp on TV. You can't see a coin on TV. You can't see a train on TV. You can, however, see a baseball player.
Autographs found on balls, bats, pictures, magazines, and even on uniforms.
Go. 2. Which line is Mickey Mantle?
But the longest lines and most excitement at shows is generated by the players' personal appearances. Last weekend in suburban New York, hometown heroes Mickey Mantle, Whitey Ford, Jim Catfish Hunter, and Reggie Jackson, in a rare appearance, played to a packed house.
Next. We're paying them anywhere from $1,000 to $30,000, plus all-inclusive expenses.
Who has received as much as $30,000?
Well, we're paying Mickey Mantle that amount. We're paying Reggie Jackson that amount.
Are you still able to make a profit by...
Not on the signing. The signing is a loss leader for us. Like a grocery or a supermarket who sells a roll of paper towels for 39 cents to get you into the store.
But where promoters like Rothstein can clean up is on the sale of signing items like balls and pictures and paid admissions and dealer tables. At the New York area show, admissions and tables added up to some $200,000. But the real moneymakers in this industry are the ball players. The big three, Mickey Mantle, Ted Williams, and Joe DiMaggio, command between $30,000 and $40,000 for a 2-day appearance, putting in 3 hours per day. Over that period, the average player will sign some 1,600 autographs, or about one every 13 seconds. As you can see, time is money, so there is not much time to mingle.
Some players will not talk to the public, or they will answer you something to the effect of, are you here for an autograph or a conversation?
How much are promoters charging for your favorite signature? Wade Boggs, $10. Dwight Gooden, $8. Pete Rose, $9. Willie Mays, $8.50. The rule of thumb is add 3 zeros to calculate their appearance fee. A closer look at these prices reveals minority players receive significantly less than their white counterparts.
It's a basic economic question of supply and demand. Since there's very few minority collectors, therefore the demand for minority players or black players, Puerto Rican, what have you, is lower.
Minority dealers like D. Robinson are a rare breed. While the paying public at shows is almost exclusively white, the most cherished color is green, as in money. An estimated 75% of the collectible business is conducted in cold, hard cash, a fact that industry sources say has some promoters, dealers, and players fearful of an investigation by the Internal Revenue Service. Are players reporting this easy money to Uncle Sam?
I've got paid in cash and turned around and gave the guy my Social Security number. He asked me for it because he was going to turn it in.
If you are not going to accept my corporate check, then you have to work for somebody else. My accountant tells me you have to do this, and that's exactly what I do.
Have you lost any players because of that?
Yes, I have several.
Oakland star Mark McGwire, one of the hottest autograph targets, is disturbed by the dark side of the business of signatures for sale. McGwire questions the motives of some promoters and how the business is affecting young fans.
There's a lot of black market stuff going on. That I've stopped signing at hotels only because a lot of the people that are in the business have little kids go to hotels and pay little kids to get cards signed for themselves and then in turn sell them on the side.
Does it bother you at all to pay for autographs?
Yeah, a little bit. A little bit. Especially if it takes 2 or 3 seconds to sign a second card, and they want another $15 for it, but well, it's worth it to them, so it's worth it to me.
And there are some players such as Dale Murphy of the Braves who will not do such shows. Just for the record, the fastest autograph signers at the card shows. Pete Rose, Charlie Hustle, hustles with his pen too. He averages more than 500 signatures per hour. And Johnny Bench is set to hold the Ironman record for one day with 2,000 autographs. Now, the slowest, despite the short name, which is a key, Ernie Banks, because Mr. Cub simply likes to talk it up with the fans. That about wraps it up for us here on the pregame show. Coming up, most of you will see the Yankees and the California Angels from Anaheim with Vince Scully and Joe Garagiola. Some of you will see the Cubs and the Braves with Bob Costas and Tony Kubek. I'm Marv Albert. Thanks for joining us. Stay tuned for baseball.
National Broadcasting Company. Now in its 7th decade of bringing you baseball's memories. Baseball's milestones. Baseball's majesty. And baseball's magical moments. NBC Sports proudly presents the Major League Baseball Game of the Week. Today, from Atlanta Fulton County Stadium, it's the Chicago Cubs versus the Atlanta Braves. The Game of the Week is brought to you by Toyota. There's quality, then there's Toyota quality. Who could ask for anything more? By Miller Brewing Company, sole sponsor of the U.S. Olympic Training Center. And by Wrangler, American Hero Jeans.
A sweltering late August day in Atlanta, and we won't kid you, there are not pennant race implications to this game, but what the heck, it's baseball, and welcome to the Game of the Week. Hi, everybody, Bob Costas, along with Tony Kubek. try and enjoy it today just for the game's subtleties, the pure and simple pleasures of our national pastime. As Jeff Pico, with a record of 4-6, goes to the mound for the Cubs, and Tom Glavine, 5-14, draws the assignment for the Braves. Third of a 4-game series. They've split the first 2. Calvin Schiraldi won Thursday for the Cubs. Pete Smith pitched a shutout last night for the Braves, the second straight shutout he has hurled. Let's go down to the field, meet the main man for each team, there with Tony.
All right, thank you, Bob. Dale, offense is down in both the American and National League this year. Why?
Well, you know, I guess it sounds maybe like an excuse, but, you know, I personally haven't done the job. I've had a lot of chances, but I think as you look at the leagues, there's got to be something different. When you look at the stats, and there's so many fewer home runs. Personally, I feel it's the ball. I think we played with a different ball last year. I've never seen so many balls stay in our ballpark this year. And I think there's something different about the ball. Sometimes I can feel the ball seems a little softer this year.
Andre, you hit a ball last night, left center field, that looked like it hit very hard. Last year was the kind of base hit it looked like the left center field that might have been out of here, but the ball died. Why?
I think I have to agree with Dale, Tony. I think the ball isn't carrying as well. I don't think we're using the very same ball that we did last year. I have to, you know, tip my hat to the pitchers who've done a great job, but from a hitter standpoint, I just don't think that the ball is carrying, jumping off the bat as well as it did last season.
What do you feel about the supposed new strike zone, Dale? Do you think the strike zone has been different this year?
I haven't noticed any difference, but I'm kind of a tough guy to ask about the strike zone. I don't know where it is anyway, but I think it's too tough for umpires to make an adjustment in height, you know, of about 6 inches. I think if you maybe made the plate a little bit smaller, a little bit wider, they might be able to adjust to that. But to vary it with each guy coming up, I think is too tough for him to do. So I haven't noticed that much difference.
What about you in the strike zone, Andre? Do you think there's a difference?
For the most part, I think the guys that have been around, been in the National League over the course of my career anyway, their strike zones seem to be the same. Some of the younger guys have tried to enforce the high strike, and I noticed that they've given the pitchers a few inches off the plate either in or away. But the older guys, the veterans, are about the same.
Andre, Dale, our thanks to you. We'll be back to Atlanta and the starting lineups right after this.
The Cubs are at exactly 500, 4th place in the National League East, 11.5 behind the first place Mets, a game and a half back of the team immediately in front of them, 3rd place Montreal. Don Zimmer's lineup: Dunston at short, Sandberg at second, Mark Grace at first, Andre Dawson the cleanup man, Jody Davis catching the day game after the night game, but for all practical purposes he's lost the #1 job to the rookie Damon Berryhill. Rafael Palmeiro in left, Manny Trio at third, Vance Law's the regular there, but Manny spells him today. Darren Jackson in center, Jeff Pico will pitch.
Tommy Glavine will pitch to a team that does not like to take bases on balls. They like to hack. Mark Grace will take the walk on occasion, so Glavine can nibble and yet still get some outs.
He's pitched well in his last 3 outings, all on the road. He's got a 2-1 record in those 3 starts with an ERA of 2.5. His last game was Monday at St. Louis, and he beat the Cardinals. A strike to Dunston. Randy Marsh, the plate umpire. Dutch Rennert at first. Harry Wendelstadt at second. Larry Poncino at third. In the air to right center. Murphy calls.
Murph having a bad year offensively. They're pitching around him a lot, seeing a lot of bad pitches, still playing well in right field. Terry Blocker, he can really cover ground out of the Mets organization center, having difficulty hitting. When you look at that ball club, you look at the middle of the diamond, Andres Thomas and Ron Gant. These 2 guys have combined for more home runs and more RBIs this year than even Trammell and Whitaker. They have the kind of power, Thomas and Gant, to be 40 home runs between them and between 150 and 200 RBIs. And Gant can run also. He can fly.
Of course, Trammell missed a stretch with a broken elbow. There's a strike to Sandberg, who checks in at 262 with 13 homers. And once again, vying for a Gold Glove at second. He's made only 6 errors all year. That's a fair ball by Perry. Extra bases. Murphy chases it near the line. And a 1-out double for Sandberg.
You shouldn't be surprised by all the cheers you hear. The Atlanta people tell us that anytime the Mets visit, or the Cubs, and to a certain extent the Cardinals, the visitors have a lot of rooters in the stands. The superstations competing here. WTBS carrying the Braves and WGN the Cubs.
And of course, over the last couple of nights when the 7th inning stretch takes place, all those Cub fans have been chanting for Harry Carey to sing, "Take me out to the ball game." He's just conducting them. He's not singing. Cubs have difficulty scoring runs. They've been very sporadic all year long. Last night, the first 2 innings off Pete Smith, a fine-looking right-hander. They had man on second base with nobody out in the first 2 innings and couldn't score. Like they had trouble advancing him. He's gone.
Glavin's play is to third. They've got Sandberg hung up. And they tag him out, but he stays in the rundown long enough to allow Grace to advance into scoring position behind him, so no harm done.
One throw too many. They'd like to have you make the rundown play with as few throws as you possibly can. Sandberg strays too far. Not good base running. The kid left-hander Glavin throws to Oberkfell, who perhaps should have run him back. Oberkfell, a veteran, really made the wrong throw. He should have kept running him back to second base. Got him going in one direction full speed. Had the shortstop or second baseman make the tag, and the runner wouldn't have been able to advance.
So a fielder's choice, 1-5-6-5. And here comes Dawson. A good year by almost anyone's standards at 307 with 20 home runs. But of course, last year he had the 49 homers and the league leading 137 RBIs.
And Dawson, of course, with first base open. Davis sitting behind him. And he's right-handed too, but he's not the kind of threat at this point in his career, not having played as much as Dawson is right here. So you may see some pitching around. Dawson's hard to walk, though.
He doesn't strike out a lot for a slugger, 59 Ks, but he gets an incredibly small number of walks for someone as dangerous as he is, the kind of guy people are apt to pitch around. He has only 28 walks.
And that's all part, along with what Dale Murphy and Andre Dawson told us about the less livelier ball, but it's also pitching around guys who've had big years. MVP year last year for Dawson. They don't want to let him hurt them with not much other power in the lineup.
Hit sharply to short. There's Thomas. A bright spot in this Atlanta season. Throws Dawson out. No runs a hit. A man is left. Back to Atlanta in a minute. Russ Nixon took over from Chuck Tanner in May. Here's the lineup he sends out today for the Braves. Ron Gant, the second baseman, leads off. Ken Oberkfell at third. Gerald Perry back atop the league leaders in batting average at first base. Dale Murphy in right field. Andres Thomas, the shortstop. Deion Janes in left. Bruce Benedict will catch. Terry Blocker, the center fielder, and Tom Glavin, the pitcher.
Jeff Pico, a non-roster player in Arizona this spring. He impressed Don Zimmer, Dick Cole, the pitching coach, with his control. Dick Cole, the pitching coach, had him and taught him a little split-fingered fastball to go along with the slider and the sinker. He keeps the ball down and throws strikes.
Gant steps in with 15 home runs and takes strike one. Pico was recalled from Iowa on May 30th. The next day, he made his major league debut and threw a 4-hit shutout against Cincinnati. It hasn't been that easy since. He's 4-6 overall. His ERA is 3.87.
And for a young pitcher, he's had a tough role for Don Zimmer. Starting at times, pitching in relief at times. Let's see if he can throw, and he already missed the mark in his half of the inning, as many strikes as Glavin did. Glavin threw 9 pitches to Don Zimmer's team in the first inning, only 1 pitch for a ball.
This is Pico's 21st appearance of the year. 11 starts, 10 times out of the bullpen. Can't lift this one in foul ground, wide of first. Grace over near the railing. Can't quite get it.
They call him Amazing Grace. It not only sounds good, but because of his bat and also a lot of his glove. He is a very smooth. He's been compared to people in his first year in the big leagues like Keith Hernandez and all else. He finds the railing and just can't quite get into the dugout enough. fact, this entire infield, Bobby, is a good one. You look at Grace and you go to Sandberg and Dunston, still young. Trio, you don't lose anything there defensively at third base today, but it's an outstanding defensive infield.
Probably a little bit better with Vance Law at third as opposed to Trio. But Trio's no slouch. Full count to Gant.
It's age-old, but it applies to Pico. You get the sinker baller early if you can until he gets the touch and the feel of the mound. A little more difficult when a pitcher's pitching on the road. He doesn't know the mound like you would in Wrigley Field. He's gotten some breaking balls up and gotten away with them so far.
As we look at this youngster Gant, who is at least a contender for Rookie of the Year honors in the National League, we don't know if we'll see him at second base throughout his career. He's not the best fielder in the business.
Struck him out. Good sinker. But he has improved this year. He strikes out a lot, and he's going to be a leadoff hitter. He's going to have to cut down the strikeouts. He's got the power. He's got the speed to steal bases. He has smoothed out his play. Bobby Dews has worked with him. Outstanding instructor. Roy Matika, another outstanding infield instructor. You got Bobby White can help, too. He's going to have to get better if he wants to stay there. But they've got a kid named Lemke down in the minor leagues that may move Gant to third base.
Oberkfell taps the first one foul. They also have Jeff Blauser, who's had a couple of cups of coffee, as they say, at the major league level, and will be back again after September 1st. Blauser can play short or second. And with Gant's bat, you could get away with moving him to third base or the outfield. 1-1. Two balls and a strike to Oberkfell. The strikeout a moment ago was Gant's 99th of the year. Abnormal for a middle infielder. This ball's well hit toward right center. Here's Dawson sprinting into the gap to make the catch.
You're seeing two of the best out there today, folks. Dawson and Murphy, both of whom have been center fielders, both with great throwing arms. In fact, Dawson made a throw at third base on Gerald Perry. The fly ball to right that was just awesome last night. Had him halfway down. Great jump for an old-timer. Day game after night game. Boy, that grass and dirt, Wrigley Field last year and again this year, has really helped his knees.
Gerald Perry went 2 for 3 last night. In his last 11 games, he's hitting over 400 to reclaim the lead from Tony Gwynn. Curveball low. He's 3 points ahead of San Diego's Tony Gwynn. It's sharply to left, but Palmeiro gets back there to clutch it. And Pico sets the Braves down in order. No score after 1. When Chuck Tanner was dismissed earlier this year, there was a virtual purge. Along with Tanner, out went coaches Bob Skinner, Willie Stargell, Al Monchak, Tony Barterone. The pitching coach, Bruce Dow Canton, remained, but just about an entire new crew of coaches was brought in, including Clarence Jones, the new hitting coach.
They sure remember Clarence in Japan, the all-time home run leader among, they call them Gaijons over the American players in Japan.
Glavine to Jody Davis in the top of the second. Well, the Braves have Clarence Jones as a coach under Russ Nixon. They've also got 3 Smiths, Pete, Lonnie, and Zane. Must raise some eyebrows from the desk clerk when they check into the hotel. Oh, sure, you're all named Smith and Jones, are you?
Hope you save the profits from the cough drop business.
Yes.
Will he be here after March 31st of midnight? Jody Davis. A lot of teams have interest with Barry Hill, as you said, winning the job, who's an outstanding looking player. Switch hitter. Jody has made no bones about it. He's gone to Jimmy Fry, the GM, wants to be traded. There are a lot of teams looking. Houston might be. Some others. Maybe Atlanta's looking for a catcher, too, if they don't renew Ozzie Virgil.
3 balls and a strike to Davis. He's had only 40 at-bats since the All-Star break. Just 5 hits and 3 RBIs. But he should have a lot of productive years left. And as scarce a commodity as quality catching is, his market value is high. Of course, he also has a big contract, so that cuts into his tradability a little bit.
You know, he got in that situation a few years ago with the Cubs, where he was catching, 140 games a year. It seemed like about 5 years straight. Got a little burned out. They didn't want to use anybody else. They had Steve Lake there. But he's still relatively young, early 30s, and he could have 4, 5, 6 years left in him.
He'll be 32 in November. Here's the 3-2 pitch to him. Line to right. Murphy scarcely has to move.
There's no question that Jody Davis thinks he's being showcased today. Cardinals scout here, Rube Walker. Red Sox scout here, Milwaukee scout here. Toronto was interested in Jody over the offseason earlier this year, so, you know, there's Eddie Casco, who must be very happy because Oil Can Boyd gave him a decent start, which may have messed up a Rick Mailer deal to the Red Sox with the can pitching well last night.
Casco, of course, a Boston scout. Palmeiro at 310. Takes inside. The Cubs have 4 of the top 10 hitters in the National League. Palmeiro, Dawson, Grace, and Vance Law are all in the top 10. The Braves' Gerald Perry, as we said, is the leader. 324 leads the National League. 360 is tops in the American. That's Wade Boggs, with Kirby Puckett also over 350.
And 2 young left-handed hitters for the Cubs. Palmeiro and Grace both handle left-handed pitching well. They know how to go the opposite way. They don't bail out on breaking stuff. Palmeiro hitting about 340, 345 against left-handers. Grace over 300. They would like these two, as they evolve with their hitting strokes, to pull the ball a little bit more in certain situations. Something that's been difficult for Joe Altobelli, the hitting instructor, and Don Zimmer. You see good swings like Grace and Palmeiro have, and you don't want to mess them up too soon and force them. That's Joe Altobelli in the background. But you also would like to have them sooner or later start pulling more.
2-2 to Palmeiro, who almost always makes contact.
That's another thing that he and Grace have been gifted with. Excellent hand-eye coordination. They rarely miss a pitch when they swing at it.
It figures that with 4 individuals in the top 10, the Cubs as a team would lead the league, and they do.
In an average, league in hits, slugging percentage, total bases, and triples. And I guess that just proves that pitching and defense keep you in contention rather than a batting average.
One out, nobody on, no score in the second, and it holds at 3-2.
Boy, this Atlanta team with Bobby Cox, the general manager, and Russ Nixon, the former catcher, now taking over the reins for Tanner, have a lot of great arms in their system. Kids you haven't heard of yet, a kid named Avery and Lilliquist, and there's on and on. John Smoltz, who's got a great arm on the staff, along with Glavin and Pete Smith.
A 1-out walk, the first issued by Glavin. What the Braves are determined to do, however, is not rush the youngsters. People like Derek Lilliquist, the left-hander, Tommy Green, who they say has just a fabulous arm. Not only will they not bring them up this September when the rosters are expanded, they don't plan to use them in the early stages of next year at the big league level. They'll let them get all the seasoning that's required, and they'll concede the fact that they're not going to contend in 1989. They just want to show improvement and build toward contention. Pitch out, nothing going on.
Palmeiro not gifted with great speed. Chuck Cottier, the third base coach, former Seattle manager, but Don Zimmer, realizing his club doesn't have a whole lot of running speed. He'll hit and run a lot more, especially with people like Trio. Sandberg will hit and run, and you got Palmeiro, Grace. They put their bat on the ball. He starts a lot of runners. You know, that's one of the reasons, I think, Bobby, getting back to the pitching and young pitchers, that some people feel the reason that Chuck Tanner was let go here. They felt the young pitchers were not handled right by him, and that's just some people's opinion. Whether or not it's true, I don't know. Zane Smith started, then pitched in relief with the bone chips. He's going to have surgery now.
Ball and a strike to Trio. 1 out and 1 on. 2 doctors, including Frank Jobe out in Los Angeles, have already told Zane Smith that he needs surgery. He's going to go to a 3rd doctor for a final opinion, and assuming he concurs, Smith will have surgery shortly.
And you know, really what happens these days with all the litigation, the club will usually only suggest the doctor to go to. They will not tell an agent or that player where they should have the surgery. And if something should go wrong during the surgery or rehabilitation process, that guy can come back and file some kind of lawsuit. And so Zane Smith and his agent will decide who's going to do the surgery.
1 and 2 to Trio. Palmeiro, who walked at first with 1 out. Trio spun around. 2 and 2.
And with a veteran hitter like Trio and Perry holding the runner on, a big gap between Gant, second baseman Perry, you know that a veteran like Trio, even with 2 strikes, will try and shoot the ball the other way. Try and take advantage of the gap, and Benedict, the veteran catcher, wants to move Trio off the plate whenever he can with inside stuff. There's the gap between Gant and Perry. I think he's going to run it. So does Glavine.
As you look at a wide shot of the field, you can see the football gridiron already laid out at Fulton County Stadium. The Falcons will get down to serious business soon. Not going. Foul back. I saw the odds out of Las Vegas on winning the Super Bowl posted by Dick Enberg and Merlin Olsen on their telecast last night. The Browns are 4-1 to go all the way, and they're given the best chance. And 28th out of 28 teams, Atlanta, 250-1.
You have come a long way. I remember you did a race for NBC one year. You didn't know what an odd was unless it was an odd person walking down the street. Now you're quoting these things out of Las Vegas. Wow.
Liner that will fall foul, and barely so. My familiarity with things odd has been enhanced by my acquaintance with you.
Hooks a little too much. Looked like an off-speed pitch up in the strike zone. So Glavine, who had that nice, easy 9-pitch first inning, they made him pitch this inning. Zimmer likes to use his entire roster. He wants to keep the bench players fresh, and Vance Law's had the big offensive year. He wants to rest them today and get Trio's bat in there.
Now the count runs out full. Dunston, along with Zimmer, they got into a well-publicized shoving match just before the All-Star break, but patched it up very quickly.
I think this is great. Zimmer's explaining the situation, what he's going to do. Dunston very attentive. I mean, Zimmy has taken him under his wing.
There goes the runner, and a liner to left for a hit. Palmeiro wheels around second, but will stop there, even though he was running on the pitch, as James fires it back in. First and second, 1 out.
That is what you call a quality at bat by Manny Trio, the Venezuelan. Jose Martinez, the first base coach, will manage Barquisimeto in Venezuela this year. Saw one of the great Latin American owners, Humberto, here with Bobby Cox last night, looking for players.
The center fielder, Darren Jackson, takes low. Those of you in the Chicago area are aware that Jackson had a nightmarish past 12 months. They discovered testicular cancer and had to have lymph nodes, more than 50 of them, removed from the chest area. Somehow has made it back. And apparently it was caught in time. You're never 100% sure, but apparently caught in time. And he's back close to 100%.
Glad to hear also that Don Zimmer's son, Tommy, discovered a tumor. Found out yesterday morning, I believe Don did, that it was benign, so he's doing all right. Tommy scouts for the Giants.
3-0. Glavin has been behind a lot of hitters. He's run a lot of counts out to 3-1, 3-2 already in the first 2 innings.
Well, his stuff is not good enough to get behind. He is not a strikeout pitcher. The 8th place hitter right here, maybe Hackett.
He does swing at the 3-0 pitch and fouls it back to the screen. Glavin has pitched a little more than 150 innings, and he has 69 strikeouts, so he's not overpowering. He's allowed better than a hit an inning, and his overall ERA exceeds 5. And with the last place team, that comes out to 5-14. Walked him. The bases are loaded for the pitcher, Pico.
Now Russ Nixon, who is not a fan of Chuck Tanner and vice versa, knows that his young pitchers will have a lot of ups and downs. Johnny Saint at one time was the pitching coach here. Bruce Del Canton, the knuckleballer, finished the season last year as the pitching coach, so he and Russ work well together. I think it's unusual with Russ that how many knuckleball pitchers are still coaching in the minor leagues. White Wilhelm for the Yankees. See where Joe Niekro now is gone. He's coaching in the minor leagues for Minnesota.
Pico has 2 hits in 24 at-bats.
They're in tight at the corners. Remember ball game we saw on a Friday night in Philadelphia, bases loaded, and Don Zimmer started all 3 runners, and it backfired. So Perry and Obergefell are tight at the corners. Didn't start him, but he was bunting him. Wasn't a suicide all out, all 3 runners going. Don's done it about a half a dozen times this year, and it's worked a few times. That was a safety.
In 24 at-bats, Pico has but 2 hits, as I said, and he struck out 8 times. Glavin looking for the strikeout here. 1-2.
Alvarez begins to throw. He's got a good curveball. Another one of those young rookies.
The 1-2 pitch. Hit sharply. Will they have time to get to? No play at second. Gant has to settle for the out at first, and Pico gets an RBI. The ball was hit pretty sharply, but Gant had to range to his left to get it, and there was no play other than to toss Pico out at first.
Pico has a nice at-bat. Behind in the count, puts the ball in play. Gant thought of going to second base, but with Darren Jackson running, who's got some speed, decided not to take a chance.
So now here's Dunston, who flied to right to start the game. Thinks about pushing a bunt and fouls it off.
Not a bad play for a guy who strikes out an awful lot. He's at 90 strikeouts.
But check this, Tony. 90 strikeouts, and that's very high for a leadoff man. But even more disturbing, 12 walks for your leadoff man?
A believer in the 11th commandment, thou shalt not pass. A tremendous talent. I mean, you're talking about raw physical ability in Dunston that very few shortstops have had in the history of this game. Running, throwing. He is ultra aggressive. And Don Zimmer this spring just told everybody else, leave him alone, he's mine. I will handle him. And it has worked. In stretches this season, he's been the best shortstop in the game. That's why, right there. Swung at a grounder.
Another look at it. And then to back up what you say about his defensive prowess, despite his great range, and that's going to lead to a lot of difficult throws from the hole, he's made only 14 errors. But one of them was last night, and it was very costly. He threw a ball away on a certain double play, and immediately after that, Dale Murphy doubled home 2. The inning should have been over. Nice block by Benedict.
So now even stop that. That was an outstanding play. And that's what the philosophy was with Benedict. He said, look, he swung at one that was almost on the ground the last time. Let's get it lower and try and bounce it. So Benedict, with a man on third, knew what he wanted to do. He didn't feel that Glavine was going to make the pitch that bad. We were trying to get him to swing at another ground ball. That was almost a two-hopper. That's an outstanding play to save a run. I think he'll be back next year. Don't think Virgil will. Rumors that Ted Simmons may end up in Houston before the day's over with.
2-2 with 2 out and 2 on. Skied to right center. There's Murphy. The Cubs get a run and strand 2. A 37-pitch inning for Tom Glavine, who trails 1-0. 95 degrees today in Atlanta, although the humidity isn't all that high. That's one redeeming feature about this afternoon, only around 50% in that category. But there's Tom Glavine after a very tough inning, toweling off.
They usually have an ammonia bucket there to get a little refreshment out of. Not drink it, it just refreshes the face.
Lest anyone thought they would actually consume the ammonia. I'm glad you cleared that up. A strike to Murphy leading off in the second. The Braves trail 1-0.
One thing Murph didn't do is make excuses. He came out of spring training with a sore shoulder, played through it, may have altered his swing. It's led to a lot of his problems with the bat.
Whoa. A tough hop, and Trio makes a great play to pick it off his ear and throw him out.
So you wonder why he had 80 games consecutively without an error? It's those kinds of hands and reflexes. And very seldom can you take a second baseman because of the throwing arm and are able to put him at third base as you can with Trio, who has great arm strength. That is an outstanding play. I mean, that ball almost took his head off.
His arm at his peak was so great, and it's still pretty good, that any relay that came in from the outfield, I mean anyone, they made sure that Trio was the relay man, and he used to like to take those ground balls right at him and hold the ball for a while to taunt base runners. This is hit sharply through the middle for a base hit for Andres Thomas, the first hit of the game for Atlanta off Jeff Pico.
One of the first things Bobby Cox did when he came over, there were so many complaints about the infield, is he redid the entire field, and it eliminated a lot of bad hops, not on this particular play. And once again, you saw why the quickest reflexes on the field have to belong to that third baseman. Ball gets on you in a hurry.
Deion James at 269. Bruce Benedict on deck. No advance by Thomas at first. You know, that's something interesting to watch for when you're at the ballpark. It's not automatic as to who's going to take a relay on an extra base hit. Guy trying to score from first on a double. In the days of the old Phillies, it would almost always be Trio. You watch the Mets play. Hernandez has a better arm than either Tuffle or Backman.
Going.
And the ball is grounded foul. He'll have to come back. And so almost always they'll try to get the ball to Hernandez, who has the better chance of cutting the runner down.
It is a young team. Trio, of course, has got some age, as is Jody Davis. If you look at Dunston Grace, Sandberg, not yet 30. Dawson, early 30s. You know, they talk about second base, and the kid drafted #1 pick for the Cubs, Ty Griffin out of Georgia Tech, now on the U.S. Olympic team. Gordon Goldsberry, a great evaluator of talent, made the statement that Griffin might move Sandberg off second base and make him a third baseman. I don't think their statement was quite that strong, but Sandberg's about as good as you can get. So how good can Griffin be?
Hit to short. 1, 2. You watch Sandberg turn a pivot like that, you think twice before displacing him back in. Today's game is brought to you by Volkswagen. Experience German engineering the Volkswagen way.
A few years ago, when Don Zimmer was a coach for the Cubs, this kid, Sean Dunston, would play out of control. That's a textbook double play. Perfect position, but an amazing thing, and it wasn't a lot of pressure put on Sandberg, but a second baseman has to make so many throws under duress with guys sliding in. Sandberg has not made a throwing error now in 193 games. Can you imagine how many times he had to throw off balance with a guy knocking him down on a pivot? He is so steady, and that's helped Dunston also.
Not since last June has he thrown one away. Cuts it a fastball up in his eyes and fouls it off. As you watch Glavine, something to look for. What Bruce Dal Canton, the Braves pitching coach, has tried to get him to do is close his shoulder up more and throw the ball a little bit more over the top. He was dropping down 3/4, and everything was coming from the same angle, and although his ball broke, it was all on the same lateral plane, and there wasn't enough distinction between his various pitches. Now when he comes over the top, the curveball has more downward action, and for some reason the fastball also has more movement on it.
What also happens, Bobby, when you open that front shoulder too soon, the hitters can see the ball quicker. But when you keep it closed, it's a more deceptive delivery.
Another put out for Murphy, and let's take a look at that motion on the replay.
I think you will see that he will take that glove and bring it back to his right shoulder. Bring it back toward him for a better fielding position. And keep the elbow tucked, and you can see the glove stays near the shoulder, and that helps keep that shoulder in a little bit longer. He and Pete Smith, who pitched the shutout yesterday, are golfing buddies. They're roommates. They pitched against each other in high school in Massachusetts.
Grace thought about dragging a bunt.
And also, twice this season, Smith and found by Glavine had gotten wins. If Glavine does it today, it'll be 3 times that that's happened. Back-to-back wins for these two kids.
Grace was 0 for 4 here last night. At shortstop, Thomas scoops it up and guns him down. There's only one other game in progress, and California, after overcoming a 6-0 deficit last night and dealing the Yankees a real body blow with a 7-6 defeat for New York, they jump on the Yanks again today and lead 4-0 in the second. Wally Joyner has a homer, a solo shot in that game for the Angels. After a very slow start, he's come alive.
And will George Steinbrenner and Bobby Quinn, the GM, pull the trigger on the deal? Rick Mailer's been offered to them, I believe, and this staff to strengthen that pitching staff for September.
Dawson picked that one up off his shoe tops, and it's a very quick inning for Glavine, who struggled through the second but breezes through the third. 1-0 Cubbies. Braves catcher Bruce Benedict. In the offseason, he trades the tools of ignorance for a zebra shirt. He's a high school basketball referee. He's got the look of a man who could lay down the law to those youngsters, doesn't he? That jutting jaw, that stern countenance. Bruce is looking for his first homer of the year. He's hitting .242.
So you think basketball officiating helps him in his job in the Major League uniform? I mean, is he more tolerant of a possible missed call by an umpire?
I doubt it sincerely.
Catchers are funny to start with because they've got to have 2 different strike zones. One for when they're hitting and one for their pitching staff when they're catching. They're going to play both ends against the middle sometimes.
The 0-2 pitch. Liner, base hit. Benedict opens the Atlanta third with a hit.
I don't know how he could have been looking for a breaking ball down and away. No balls and 2 strikes, but it sure looked like he was because he looks like he hits an outstanding pitch. Right where Jody Davis wants it. And he was protecting the plate and hit an outstanding pitch from Pico.
I wonder which is more difficult to interpret. The distinction between a block and a charge, or the new balk rule.
I know which one's more irrational. New discernible stop rule, not the pause that has been refreshing to pitchers and pitching coaches this year.
I had to get you started. Here's Blocker.
That's all.
Blocker doesn't have great power, and they're trying to get him just to make more contact, hit down on the ball, utilize his speed. They'd like to move him up near the top of the order if he can hike that batting average a little bit.
What they had to do was get somebody who could run the ball down in center field. That was the primary reason for obtaining him, and Bobby Cox felt with these young pitchers, and while they're in the process of rebuilding, trying to turn the corner to become competitive again, he didn't want his pitching staff to suffer with those balls going into gaps. Runners taking extra bases.
That's through. Benedict's going to stop at second. A catcher's speed in Dawson's arm. That adds up to caution.
You might have also noticed he did not round second base too far on Andre's throwing arm.
Wow. California pouring it on. The Yankee pitching staff is in tatters, and I'm sure that George Steinbrenner's patience has been exhausted.
See that Al Leiter started in the minor leagues a couple of days ago. I don't believe he lasted an inning again. Don't know if it's the elbow problem. They keep saying a blister. You know, what would they have to give up at this stage if they want to have a legitimate shot in September of catching Detroit and Boston? They'd have to give up one of their kids. Maybe it's Leiter, but he appears to be hurt. Roberto Kelly, he appears to be hurt. Bam Bam Meulen's a third baseman. Hensley Meulen's almost untouchable.
A ball to Glavine in a sacrifice situation. He's one of the better hitting pitchers in the National League. There's Bobby Wine flashing the signs.
They got all kinds of trick plays that they are trying now. That time, Trio charged Dunston with a slow catcher at second base, went to third base. And they may try play 2 now, whatever that is. They got about 4 different ones. Many times, if you just do the conservative one, get the sure out, don't mess up at third base. You want to get the lead runner if you can at third. If not, you want to try secondarily to get the runner off first to keep the double play in order. And then the third option is to just take the sure out at first. You create a lot of gaps in the infield, and you can create more problems than not by getting too fancy.
Meanwhile, Pico's behind 2-0, and Glavine swings at it, taps it to Trio, who whirls and throws to Dunston for the force.
So, with Russ Nixon saying, look, they got to play on, I'm going to try the old slug butt. Glavine, as you said, not a bad hitter, but it backfires, so they don't advance the runners. Trio pounced on that ball in a hurry, and Dunston, with that strong throwing arm, thought of going to first base, so the play didn't work. But there were a lot of holes. I mean, shortstop was wide open, as was the second base slot. And the 2 middle infielders on the move.
So now they have better speed on the bases, at least. Benedict has been removed from the lines. The potential tying run in the person of Blocker at second. Glavine, who runs pretty well, is now at first. And here's Gant, who struck out in the first. 0-1. The Yankee starter today was Charlie Hudson. California got 1 in the first and 7 in the second.
You think they got a little bit of turmoil started again with the Candelaria knee thing? John says he's got cartilage damage, can't pitch. Bob Quinn, the GM, says, our doctors say it's not that bad. I heard Candelaria's already gone home.
0-2. The Angels are still batting in the second. I thought the inning was closed out. They've gotten 9 runs in the second inning, and they're still batting. The 0-2 pitch.
Angels, after that slow start, and the Cookie Rojas really put her in gear over the last few months.
Pico's 1-2 pitch. Misses. The 15 homers by Ron Gant are the most by any Atlanta second baseman instance, Davy Johnson clouded 43 in 1973. That was the year 3 Braves hit over 40. Aaron, Johnson, and Darrell Evans. The 2-2. Breaking ball fouled away.
Gant was rushed a little bit last year. He came right from Double-A ball. At the end of the season, Chip Tanner didn't want to play him an awful lot, wanted to win ball games instead of develop players. I think he'll cut his strikeouts down as he learns to hit with 2 strikes, learn to use his speed more.
Fastball lined right at Trio. There's the double play. And base run. Blocker was caught off. Trio clutched the bullet, turned it into 2. Here's a look back at a very special Olympic moment. Coming off Ron Gant's bat, this ball is just a blur. Trio takes it. Blocker took a couple steps too many toward third, and he's finished. Manny Trio's already had a great day with the glove. Look at Gant's reaction. Can't hit a ball much harder than that. Has nothing to show for it. Trio made a terrific play on a sharply hit ball by Dale Murphy that took a bad hop. He reacted in an instant, turned it into an out. Earlier in this inning just completed, with 2 on and nobody out, Trio fielded the little bouncer by Glavine and got the force at third base with the shortstop Dunston covering, and then he closes out the inning with that play.
You might have seen Gant's reaction. Normal when you're at the plate, but if you're a middle infielder and you have that kind of offense-oriented mentality, and you take that out to your position after lining the double play, you can hurt yourself. And that's one of the things they're trying to do. Hey, look, the offensive part of your job is over now. You're a middle infielder. Now let's get the hitters. Sometimes it's hard to convince a guy that the only time that is valuable is when he's in the batter's box.
Thomas from behind second base tosses Davis out.
Oh, he's been a great surprise. I mean, not just with the bat. He has made some errors. He'll get careless on throws at times, but another shortstop from the Dominican Republic, Andres Thomas, he's got those long legs, and unlike an Ozzie Smith or some of the quicker guys, he gobbles up ground in a greater fashion than you would think. He's steadying his play all the time. 2 middle infielders who got some pop. They're hard to find.
Palmeiro takes a strike. Well, when you look at the present Brave team and you figure the handful of players they'll retain, look upon as their big league nucleus, and then try to build with, into right center field, and Blocker is there. 2 quick outs in the Chicago 4th. Russ Nixon has to number among those who figure into the big picture Andres Thomas, Ron Gant, whether it's second base or someplace else, Gerald Perry, who's vying for a batting title, and the status of just about everyone else among the position players would be up in the air, and that even includes Dale Murphy. They'd be loath to trade him, but they must at least consider the possibility if the deal is right.
Well, this is a franchise player, and they hope that his poor offensive year this year is an aberration. He's still young, plays hard.
Last year, Murphy hit 44 homers, drove in 105, and hit almost 300. This year, he's got 22 homers, 66 ribbies, and his average is 228.
It'll be interesting to watch here the Murphy stats. Where's the offense? Ask George Bell. Ask Dawson, although he's hitting 300. Ask a lot of the sluggers who had the big year, but this year, well, there may be a dozen pitchers, depending upon September, of course, that win 20 games in the major leagues this year.
When you look at the comparative stats, maybe we can get it up there again between Murphy last year and this. The one that might be overlooked is the slugging percentage. He was slugging over 580 at this time last year, and that's the most revealing number of all. He was also on his way to well over 100 walks. Three and one to Trio. Lazy fly ball to left. Deion James flips the shades and makes the catch. Second straight 1-2-3 inning for Glavine. He trails it 1-0 as his mates come up in the 4th. Oberkfell, Perry, and Murphy in the Atlanta 4th. Curveball in there from Pico. And that fine lady is perhaps the greatest baseball fan in the South, Pearl Sandow, who has missed fewer than 10 Braves games. Hits sharply to Sandberg, plays it side saddle, and throws him out. Fewer than 10 Brave games since they got the big league franchise in 1966, and before that, she was a fixture at the Atlanta Cracker games through the years. All the players know her. They'll come over to the railing and chat with her before games. Virtually never misses one.
But she probably listened to Ernie Harwell. Didn't he broadcast for the Atlanta Crackers? Wasn't that a trade, a player for a broadcaster?
Yep. The Dodgers had a catcher named Cliff Dapper.
Yeah, you got her.
A strike on the outside edge to Perry, and Red Barber became ill, and the Dodgers wanted Ernie Harwell, a highly regarded minor league announcer then, to fill in for a month or so. And the owner of the Crackers said, okay, fine, but this is a valuable commodity. Send me a catcher from somewhere in your minor league system. So Harwell, the broadcaster, was dealt for Dapper, the catcher. Right at Dunston. Every at-bat is personally important to Perry as he duels with Gwynn for the batting title. He's 0 for 2 today.
It's really terrific to watch Sean Dunston, who used to rush everything, used to throw every ball like it was the last throw he's ever going to make. Now he's learned to corral more often than not. All that great talent. Not as tense. The hands have become more relaxed. The throwing arm more accurate. See, he's got fewer errors than Ozzie Smith, doesn't he, at this point in the season? He's playing on dirt and grass most of his games. You get trickier hops. And that's not a knock at Ozzie Smith, who may have been the greatest of all time. May still be.
0-1 to Murphy. Murph doesn't turn 33 until March, so he should still be in his prime. And my suggestion a moment ago that the Braves would consider, under extreme circumstances, with a blockbuster offer, consider trading him, was not to indicate that I feel this season is the beginning of a decline, the beginning of his twilight. Not at all. But when you're a team in the Braves' position, you have to consider almost every option, as remote as the option of trading this guy might be. Off-speed curveball rolled to short. Dunston again. And Pico makes quick work of the Braves in the fourth. Back after these messages from your local station. Well, Tony, what a poignant moment this is. The last time I'll see you until next March or April. I'm off the baseball beat after this, and on to Seoul.
You have a good time there? You're going to be one of the, late night hosts? Incidentally, I must tell you about your new show that started last week. You have one viewer.
That's what I was afraid of.
Let me read. At least one viewer. My daughter Margaret stayed up till the wee hours to see Linda Ellerby and Billy Crystal and Gary Coleman. And she taped you for us. And over a cup of coffee and a fresh caramel roll every morning, we watched you. And you were sometimes you're exceptional, and another times, well, and it's nice. It's a very stimulating show. And I would think
it doesn't take much to get you revved up, actually. Anything represents a departure from your normal routine. Darren Jackson poking one toward left center field, and that one's extra bases. One bounce against the wall. He speeds to second and stops there with a leadoff double in the fifth.
I think Terry Blocker lost that ball in the sun. He started off and looked like he had a good jump, and then as he glared into the sun, I didn't see the glasses go down. And then he kind of gets a little hesitant and loops back after it. And really doesn't take a beeline to it. It's going to be over his head anyway, but it looked like he may have lost it. These have been situations that plagued the Cubs last night. And Pete Smith shut him out, getting that runner to third base when you can.
So now a sacrifice spot for Pico, who's had only one successful sacrifice bunt this year. He squares. Bunts it toward third. Glavine picks it up, fumbles it, and doesn't get him. Collision at first.
Here comes
the runner coming to the plate. In there.
There will be an error charge to the pitcher, Glavine. I don't know how, Bob, Gerald Perry stopped that ball. He went right into the path of the runner. Look at Perry. That ball should have been in the right field corner. Excuse me, Gant coming on to cover with Perry charging. And Gant, who's not a big guy, but he's very muscular, just almost took his life in his hands and all but threw a block into the runner. So be sacrifice error and great base running by Jackson. Didn't have time to listen to his coach. He saw the ball and just took off.
Here's Dunston, and he bunts. Foul up the first baseline. Pico gets credit for a sacrifice. The error is on Glavin, and Jackson never stopped. The ball wasn't loose for long. Gant picks it up, strong throw to the plate, and Jackson is barely safe, which brings up the question. With nobody out, and with Dunston, Sandberg, and Grace to follow, was that a worthwhile chance to take?
Well, really, it was a play that was a young mistake because Oberkfell standing right there, and he's a right-handed thrower. He gets the out easily, no chance for a play at third, so Glavin took the ball right away from him. So that's a kid. You want aggressiveness among your young players, but he was a little overly enthusiastic. Should let Obi have it.
Had Glavin not fumbled it, he certainly would have gotten the out at first. And as it was, the play was so close that the collision ensued, and Jackson came motoring all the way around. 2-1.
It's the kind of play that you like your catcher, Benedict in this case, to control. And yell where to go, and he should also yell, he probably was, being a veteran, who should take it. And Glavin just ran Oberkfell off the ball and it hurt him.
This one is blooped into shallow center field. Here's Blocker for the catch. So Dunston has flied out 3 times today. And up comes Sandberg as we again remind you we'll select the NBC Miller Lite player of the game when this one's over with. Sandberg, the 1984 National League MVP. He's remained an all-star, but his offensive production has, I think it's fair to say, been very good, especially for a middle infielder, but not as overwhelming as some people thought it would be. He hasn't had the 25 homers, 90 RBIs every year.
Well, Jimmy Fry had him pulling the ball a little bit more on certain occasions. He became a number 3 hitter. Had a big year, RBIs and defensively. You know, when you don't see Sandberg day in and day out, there's Dunston and Zimmer again, just going over game situations.
Sky-high fly ball. James to the warning track in front of the 330 sign for the catch.
When you don't see Ryan Sandberg as the runner goes back to first every day, you forget how good he is. I mean, he does everything so steadily and so easily. Throwing, fielding the ball, generates some power on occasion, and runs well, steal you a big base. You can hit and run with him. You forget how really good he is because he's not flashy. But he never messes up in almost any area. Defensively, offensively, and you overlook people like that. And of course, last year, Dawson had a big MVP year, so he got overlooked again.
Grace. Ground ball. It's off Perry's glove. Does he have time to recover? Yes, with Glavin getting credit for the putout. The Cubs score a run, lead it 2-0 halfway through in Atlanta. Despite the fact that the Orioles started out with that 21-game losing streak, they now have a better record than the Braves. Atlanta's record by half a game is the worst in the major leagues. And Seattle and Philadelphia make up the quartet with the worst records in the majors.
I think a difference between Atlanta, Baltimore, and also Philadelphia, the fact that there's some age on those other teams, Baltimore and Philadelphia, and Russ Nixon's team is building, along with Bobby Cox, the GM, with a pretty solid base. Last 3 drafts, first #1 draft, have been left-handed pitchers. They've got them stockpiled, a very prized commodity. So they're building with pitching. It'll be interesting to see when these 2 teams turn the corner and become competitive again. Will it happen next year or the year after?
They were 12-27 when Tanner was fired, 32-57 since. And Thomas pops one back behind the plate. No chance for Jody Davis. When you look at the Braves prospects, as you say, Tony, it's the pitchers who are more likely to help them quickly. kid like John Smoltz, who made an impressive debut against the Mets. Since then, he struggled a little bit, but he's tomorrow's starter. Lilliquist and Green probably will be heard from by late next season at the major league level. But when Nixon talks about position players who can help the Braves, most of them are at the A level or the AA level. They're not going to be ready probably until 1990 or in some cases 1991, so they know they have to be patient.
Yeah, but you still got Gerald Perry, Bob, who's at first base. You know, could lead the league this year. He's relatively young. Ron Gant, Andres Thomas. So, you know, these are young players who by the time they get to be 25, 26, 27, they're going to have 3, 4, or 5 years under their belts in some cases. So they've got some young talent here right on the team and as far as position players. But again, to me, as we look at Gant, what will this ballpark called the launching pad and Wrigley Field do to young pitchers? We had young pitchers before, and it's hard to sustain year after year here. Not this year. It's a different year with a different baseball.
The breaking ball is popped meekly toward Grace. In fair ground, he makes the play. Thomas retired to start the last half of the fifth. Well, another thing the Braves have to think about, do they want to trade Rick Mailer, who will become a free agent during the winter? His greatest value, obviously, now is to a contender, and if that's the case, the deal needs to be made before September 1st so he can be eligible for postseason play. Mailer doesn't rule out the possibility of re-signing with the Braves, although he thinks he might have more value next year to a contender, so he'll consider all the options if he isn't traded first. James grounded into a double play, his only time up. That's out of play.
Jeff Pico beginning to move the ball in and out, change speeds well. He's been throwing his breaking ball over for strikes, leading off some hitters on occasion, mixing his pitches up. Like Glavine, not really overpowering. Got to rely on back and forth, change of speeds, in and out.
Got him.
There it was. Great changeup. That is that circle change again that looks like the screwball that becomes so effective that so many pitching coaches are teaching now.
It's Pico's first strikeout since he got Gant to begin the last half of the first.
Yeah, you could see the number of dimensions on that pitch as it left at hand. Downward movement, outward movement, back and forth, or change of speed movement.
Benedict had a single his last time, and now he's got a pair. That's the fourth hit off Pico, all of them singles.
Just trying to throw first pitch strike, make it a quality pitch, especially you get down to the lineup, the 7, 8, 9 hitters. Why waste 4, 5, 6 pitches nibbling? They're not going to beat you with a home run too often, so you very basically try and throw a strike and hope he hits it at somebody.
Blocker grounded a single into right field his first time up. Used to be New York Met property. A chopper toward the middle. Sandberg behind the bag, underhands to Dunston, and that'll do it in the last half of the fifth. Pico and the Cubs lead Glavine and the Braves 2-0. And here we see a woman obviously in search of the broadest possible perspective. And as she well knows, this telecast is presented by authority of Major League Baseball and may not be reproduced or retransmitted in any form without the express written consent of Major League Baseball. On to the top half of the sixth. Dawson, Davis, and Palmeiro for Chicago. You know, we talked about Lilliquist and Green and some of the other young pitching prospects in the Braves system. The Cubs have a few of their own, and the most prominent is right-hander Mike Harkey. And Don Zimmer and Jim Fry are counting on him, at least tentatively, to make an impact in 1989.
He's just blown people away at every level he's been at. I don't think they're going to try and take a chance on him this September. They want him to get a full season under his belt. Angels had 7 consecutive hits, 9 runs. Howells hit a home run. Guidry in the ballgame last we saw in that 10-0 game. Do you think Reggie could come out of Oakland and his car dealership and help him? Rumors that his agent was talking to the Yankees. Reggie's denied it.
Center field, Blocker going back. This one's really carrying. It's up against the fence. Dawson sprints around second. Heads for third. He had an idea about an inside the Parker. And I tell you, with 2 outs, I bet he would have tried it because the ball rolled around on the warning track for a while. And he definitely was acting as if he might give it a go, but with nobody out, Cartier wisely stops him.
You had a chance to see that Andre Dawson can still run. This ball almost looked after it hit the fence like it hit him off the head on the carom. There it is, and then he can't find it. He's saying, where is it? And left fielder Deion James trying to help him out, and Andre had thoughts until he saw the stop sign. You know, the way Andre ran from home to first, it was kind of coasting. I believe he thought that ball was out. And again, that's that feedback he had off last year in the big home run year where balls like that were going out of the ballpark. And he was going to start going in the trout around first base, and the ball stayed in. Infield halfway, except Obich fell at third.
So the Hawk is 1 for 3. A leadoff triple here in the 6th. Cubs are already in front 2-0. They've won 6 of 10 against the Braves this year. And a win today would push them a game over 500 overall.
Cubs have got some terrific players to watch. When you look at Dunston and, you know, what he can do physically, Sandberg, his smoothness, and Dawson in all areas.
Jose Alvarez once again. He was loosening up earlier. 32-year-old rookie. Shallow right. Let's see what Dawson is thinking about.
No
Murphy
way.
charging.
No way.
He just draws the throw and stays put.
When you start talking about right fielders that can throw, you talk about Barfield in the American League and Canseco with an outstanding arm, but 2 of the best right here in the ballpark. Dawson and this throw right here. Nobody out, and Dawson's not going to take any chances. Goes halfway up the line, but that was a sheer bluff. Maritti struggled a good part of this year with men in scoring position.
Taps this one foul. He's walked and flied to center. Began the day hitting .310. Cubs got Scott Sanderson back last night, his first appearance of the year. He had back problems in the offseason, more recently shoulder difficulties. He pitched a couple of innings last night and did all right. That one's in there. 0-2. There's Sanderson.
Yeah, there are only 4 men in that pen today. Mike Bilecki, salmonella poisoning, back in the hospital. Sutcliffe yesterday pitched with just 3 days rest.
Foul by a foot or 2. And fielded by Alvarez down in the bullpen.
Dutch runner right there. Black armband, one of them, one arm for Lee Wire. Just a great man, a great umpire who really lived life to its fullest. Dick Stello, of course, killed tragically in a car accident in the offseason. Freakish.
Just missed the outside corner. 1-2. Manny Trio next. We're in the 6th. 2-0 Cubs. Dawson at third with 1 out. Right at Gant. They'll hold him. 2 down. Now maybe Andre's saying to Chuck Cartier, heck, it might have been worth the try a few minutes ago.
Well, he'd have been dead by about 20 feet if he had.
Then maybe it wouldn't have been worth the try.
Right at him. And you have to bother looking him back. Just make sure that he freezes Andre. And it'll be interesting to see when you look at Mark Grace and Rafael Palmeiro with the great bat control. And average, if they develop like Mattingly and Brett did, who didn't hit many home runs as young kids. Also both left-handed hitters, of course, and then they learned to pull the ball a little bit more and hit in situations. You would think that Wrigley Field, with 81 games there, that those kids are going to end up someday hitting around 20 home runs apiece, if not more.
A ball and a strike now to Manny Trio. When you talk about teaching good young hitters to pull a ball, you're not talking about trying to jerk the pitch on the outside edge to right field, in their case, since they're both left-handed hitters.
Well, you're talking about giving in on that outside pitch up until 2 strikes, the old Ted Williams theory, and don't mess with it. Take it and wait for a pitch inside. But this is a bad year to take a young hitter and try and teach him to pull, because it's a pitcher's year. And, you know, last year might have been different. Balls didn't seem to be moving as much in the strike zone with the flatter seams.
The 2-1 pitch. 2-2. The theory is for a young hitter to learn how to maneuver the count, get ahead on the count, 2-0, 3-1, and then Joe Altobelli in the dugout, former Giant and Oriole manager, and then you look for a pitch on the inside portion of the plate that you can pull, and you take everything else because you're still ahead in the count. 3-2.
They teach you that in Syracuse? It's very astute.
Why, thank you. Syracuse didn't have a baseball team when I was there. They played football and basketball. They had no baseball team. Lacrosse, too. Here's the payoff. Murphy moving toward the line. Dawson opened the inning with a triple. And he stays at third as Glavine retires the next 3. Blocker took one off the noggin, but the Cubs didn't dent the score. Tom Glavine lasted 6 innings, due to be the leadoff man here in the bottom half, and Jerry Royster will bat for him. A 13-year Major League veteran, signed by the Dodgers originally in the early 70s. Then he was traded in that Jimmy Wynn, Lee Lacy, Tom Paciorek deal to the Braves for Dusty Baker back in '75. He had a long tenure with Atlanta. That's Jim Acker getting ready in the bullpen. Alvarez had been throwing earlier. This is the second time around in Atlanta for Royster, who takes a ball. From Atlanta, he went to San Diego, then the White Sox, very briefly with the Yankees. Now back down south.
He's 5 for 23 as a pinch hitter. No home runs, no RBIs, and that's been a weak spot for this team. Ted Simmons has been so good in this area for so many years, struggling this year, but they've got 1 home run and 10 RBIs and 184 at-bats in pinch hitters this year, so that's been a struggle.
You mentioned that Simmons could be traded. We're not saying it would happen. Houston is a team that is in search of a catcher. Ted can't catch every day, but he is a very valuable bench player, especially for a contender, dangerous hitter, and a switch hitter.
And Houston struggling lately, 5-5, 4.5 games back.
Jackson makes the catch, and Royster is retired as a pinch hitter. There's Simba. And what does he need the jacket for today? He's always been a little different.
Talking to Dwayne Stat, one of the broadcasts, Steve Stone, who does broadcasting for the Cubs, they were talking about Simmons, and they were saying, you know, young Berryhill, as we look at Glavine in the dugout, he looked like he was going to be knocked out. They had somebody warming up, and then all of a sudden he got out of a rough jam. But they were comparing Damon Berryhill to Simmons, and they say they think he's got more power than Simmons. Won't be the high average hitter. Jordan Davis catching today, of course, the night game. Pico with that split-fingered fastball that looks like a screwball on occasion is been a pretty effective pitch. It looks like he changed his speeds on it also by spreading those fingers apart.
Gant was thinking about a bunt. He takes a strike, 1-2. He has struck out and then scorched one toward third base. The Trio caught and turned into a double play. Bottom half of the 6th, 2-0 Cubs. Each team with 4 hits. The Braves have made 1 error, but in case you're wondering, the second Chicago run was earned, because even though Glavine misplayed the bunt by Pico in the 5th and the run scored on that play, I'll explain it further after this pitch. A 2-2 delivery. Breaking ball that he reaches for and lofts to left. Palmeiro has it. Even though Glavin's throw eluded Gant and Darren Jackson scored all the way from second on the play, there was nobody out, and it would have been a sacrifice in any case, and the next hitter, Dunston, flied out to center, and that would have been a sacrifice fly. So based upon the subsequent developments in the inning, the run is earned.
You're amazing. You can synopsize something so succinctly that it just... I'm going to miss you. These are the little nuances of the game and the broadcasting field that I don't know who's going to pick you up and overcome all my deficiencies. It's going to be tough.
Yeah, and I'm going to miss people using words like synopsize.
Yes, sir. What a guy.
Obi. Breaking ball high. There's Tom Glavine, lost in thought. Didn't pitch that badly.
No, all you want a guy to do is keep your team in the ball game, and that he's been able to do. It's the fourth outing in a row that he's done that. In 7, 8 innings.
He threw 80 pitches in 6 innings, gave up just 4 hits, didn't strike anybody out, walked a couple, and trails 2-0.
He looks like he's got a pretty good feel for pitching. He doesn't have overpowering stuff, but you'd rather have a guy who knows how to pitch a little bit than who's just a thrower.
This series concludes here tomorrow. John Smoltz against Jamie Moyer. Contrast in styles, Moyer with the great changeup. Smoltz throws real, genuine heat.
And got a great curveball. Interesting, the other day, Steve Stone again, who won a Cy Young Award for the Baltimore Orioles, a Cubs broadcaster, worked with the breaking pitch with different grips for Smoltz out of the bullpen the other day.
Palmeiro near the line makes the catch as he crosses over into foul ground. So Oberkfell fouls out. That's it in the 6th. And we'll be right back after these messages from your local station. Today's game is brought to you by the heartbeat of America, today's Chevy truck. On to the 7th we go. Jim Acker out of the Atlanta bullpen.
Jim, who tore a muscle in his forearm, missed well over a month. He's trying to come back and some arm problems and try and get a contract for next year.
He's ahead of Darren Jackson 0-2. Breaking ball got him.
And when Acker's got that knuckle curve going, it can just be a pitch that eats you up. Difficult pitch to control for him. The trouble at times he's been controlled. He's got that hard sinker. Right-handers don't like to hit off him. Left-handers give him trouble.
Jeff Pico has been in the middle of both scoring innings. He grounded out and got an RBI in the 2nd. And then Jackson scored all the way from second on his successful sacrifice with the Glavine error tacked on in the 5th.
Well, against the Cubs, you've always got a chance, because if you can get into their bullpen, which has really been a big problem for Don Zimmer this year, Gossage has struggled more often than not. He's really looking for a closer. Les Lancaster, they thought he might be that. He's on the disabled list now.
Al Nipper is also on the DL, so they're a little thin in that department. 1-2. On the outside corner, and Acker opens with a pair of strikeouts.
He throws a similar kind of curveball as Bert Hooton. The usual curveball, they push it out with those 2 fingers, not that spike curve or a normal grip. Almost a knuckleball grip. Oddly enough, they both went to the University of Texas. Cliff Gustafson.
Dunstan's 0 for 3. Look out.
That's a guy that they like to rile up, although that's one of the areas that Zimmer has really helped him. But if you don't calm your temper down, if you continue to be volatile and challenge pitchers, they're going to continue to throw at you. Especially a guy like Acker, who does have that curveball, as we just saw, wants to keep hitters honest. No, you're still alive, Sean. You may get up now. I bet his heart was going in a hurry, huh?
I liked it, though. A little page out of the Jose Cardinal Joaquin Andujar School of Theatrics. Joe Pepitone style. That'll make the seats. I mean, if you're hurt or if you're threatened, you might as well milk it for all the drama it's worth. Zimmer's a guy who knows all about serious meanings. It happened twice to him during his career. One and two.
Yeah, Zim was in a coma for, I don't forget how many days, but it was life-threatening. He got that steel plate.
Soft bouncer to short. Thomas unloads quickly and finishes Dunston. Acker sets the Cubs down, literally and figuratively. Perry, Murphy, and Thomas set to go in the bottom of the 7th against Pico. That's a ball to Perry, who's 0 for 2. Began the day with a 3-point lead on Tony Gwynn in the National League batting race. Gwynn is trying for his 3rd batting championship. He won at .351 in 1984 and then hit .370, best in the majors last year. The 0 for 2 has cost Perry a couple of points. This one is a broken bat fly ball, and Palmeiro is there to make him 0 for 3.
Pico looking for a complete game. It would be the 26th complete game of the year for Cubs pitchers. And part of that due to their bullpen. Now, what I think is extraordinary, they think they're doing a heck of a job, but the game has changed with relief specialists. But back in 1971, the Cubs led the National League in complete games with 75. I guess Ferguson Jenkins, such a great pitcher with these Cubs, must have been on that staff.
Murphy drills it deep but foul. Jumped on the high curveball. Keeping track of the race between Perry and Gwynn. The Padres are in Montreal tonight, and Gwynn, assuming he plays, will try it against right-hander Bryn Smith. It's amazing that Gwynn's in the race at all. In early June, he was hitting in the 230s. He's sizzled since then. Hit over 400 for the entire month of July. Well over.
Come on, Mark.
There's Perry. Called strike 3.
You know, talking to Bobby Cox last night, and, you know, he feels that perhaps the strike zone has expanded a little bit, not up, but a little bit outwardly in both legs, and he says this year he feels that Dale Murphy, who is a free swinger, has questioned more umpires' call than all the other years that Bobby Cox has been around him. The pitch is one of those borderline. You look at his center field camera angle, not a true angle, appeared to be outside. Dale's having one of those kinds of years.
Thomas is 1 for 2 as he takes low.
You know, Andre's stance up at the plate is so much like Julio Franco's. With that bat held so high and level with the ground, both from the Dominican, of course. You wouldn't advise a young hitter to hold that bat that way and that far back. Look where he is. He's got a long way to come with those hands to get the barrel through the strike zone, but it works for him. Two and two.
ERA is still at 3.22. Technically, he did not lose another decimal, or another percentage point, I should say. There's only one decimal, no matter how you figure it.
You got her, kid. They didn't teach you that at Syracuse.
The 2-2.
Should have paid attention to that.
Here's a chopper, and Dunston has it.
Look out.
He's going to put a hole in some first baseman's hand one day. Pico sets him down 3 straight and leads 2-0. Goose and Bruce in the respective bullpens, 2 of the great relievers all time, and each, for different reasons, with his future in doubt. Gossage has been generally ineffective, especially when compared to the standard he set for himself through the years. Generally ineffective for the Cubs this year. And Suter, after battling back, missing virtually 2 entire seasons, coming back, then is stricken with Bell's palsy in the middle of this season, a season in which he had pitched surprisingly well. Sandberg rifles one through the middle, and he's aboard to start the 8th.
Bob, it'll be interesting to see when Goose and Bruce, when their names come up 5 years after retire, whether or not they will very quickly be put into the Hall of Fame. Well, you would think a Raleigh Fingers will be there. I mean, in this age of specialization, with all the pressure and the longevity that Suter and Gossage had, and I don't know what job in baseball has got more pressure than the one they've had to do. Game after game, when they were in their prime, of course.
Gossage is 2-2. He has an ERA of 4.24 and has 12 saves. And most importantly, 24 strikeouts in 34 innings. He used to be at least a K an inning man.
Great bat control, and Grace doesn't strike out much. Selective speed on first base. See if Don Zimmer starts Sandberg. Also, what he would like to have Grace do, they're working out in batting practice, is start trying to pull the ball in these situations to that right side. Try and create a first and third and take advantage of the hole there. Not going.
Most importantly, when you look at a reliever's stats, Gossage has 12 saves, but he's also failed in 10 other save situations. They thought he could replace Lee Smith and thereby justify the deal that sent Smith to the Red Sox for Schiraldi and Nipper. It hasn't worked out exactly that way. There he goes. No, it's a bluff. And Grace bounces it foul.
He was going, but he thought perhaps there was a pitch out because, as Vince Coleman has said, why there won't be many 100 stolen base people in baseball anymore, that they've gone to that little glide step. A lower front leg kick by Acker, and Sandberg thought he read a pitch out. A couple false steps and then went back. At the Grace numbers, he walked 43 times. He has struck out just 29. That's bat control.
Grace is 0 for 3 today as he tries to keep his batting average above 300.
These two teams are down near the bottom in stolen bases, and they do not have a very good percentage success ratio of steals to caught stealing. Going again.
And it's popped up. Shallow center field. Blocker in. Gant back. Blocker's got it.
Well, watching the runner, Gant, perhaps going over to cover, lost the ball, and Blocker, who already off the bat of Andre Dawson, has taken a chip off the old Blocker, comes in to pick him up.
Oh, my.
My what? Don't call attention to it, please.
No, actually, I can't tell you how glad I am.
You didn't say it.
You said it.
You betcha.
Dawson had a triple his last time.
Oops.
And it's off the glove of Benedict. And Sandberg's on his way to second. That could be scored either way.
Well, it was a catchable ball, and it was one of those pitches that squirted for some reason out of the hand of Acker. Trying to get a little extra sink on it. Benedict has it go off the webbing of his glove. And not yet gotten an official scorer's decision.
Pass ball.
PB.
Dawson pokes one foul into the Atlanta dugout. Albert Hall had a comfortable perch and had to scamper away. This is Dawson's last at bat, and either he thinks Blocker's going to catch his ball on the warning track or that it's going out because he's not running full tilt. Now when the ball hits the fence, he's thinking triple. As it continues to roll on the warning track, he had at least a notion about an inside the Parker.
That was a wasted opportunity by the Cubs, which has happened so often this year. Triple, nobody out, and Davis, Palmeiro, and your trio could get Andre home.
Acker checks Sandberg, and then Dawson spanks one to left for a hit. Sandberg waved home by Cotier. Here comes the throw by James, cut off by Obertfell. 3-0 Chicago.
And the pass ball didn't help. Andre looked like he got a hanging breaking ball. Up and in. No, it wasn't a breaking ball. It was a fastball or a straight change that was inside part of the plate right around belt high. Good hitters. Dawson hitting over 300. Don't miss those kinds of pitches too often. A weak hitter might pop it up, take it, swing through it. Not a Dawson.
So Sandberg lined a single to open the inning. And a souvenir for one of the prettiest patrons in the house. Sandberg moved to second on a pass ball. And Dawson singles him home. Davis is 0 for 3 and 5 for 43 since the All-Star break.
I would think that Jim Acker came on to relieve Tommy Glavine. Still a little stiffness in the after that torn muscle in his forearm. And said that on his breaking ball, it really hurts him. Now there's a good one, a little off-speed breaking ball. He said when he puts those fingers back and puts that curved ball back in there and pushes it with his hand, it still is a little stiff. He doesn't appear to have that real snap on that breaking ball today at this point.
This inning illustrates why those scorers' decisions aren't just important to the figure Filberts at the Elias Scorers Bureau. It could potentially have an impact on Acker's ERA. This one is squibbed foul. Assuming he gets out of this inning without further incident, this run is going to be unearned because the pass ball represents a failure on the part of one of his teammates. However, had that pitch been scored a wild pitch, and it very well could have been, as Alvarez gets up again, then Acker would have created his own difficulty and the run would have been earned.
So are you intimating that because of the subjectivity on the part of the scorer on those kinds of calls?
The runner goes. Here's the throw from Benedict. And Dawson is in there. The ball came loose. The throw had him beaten.
You know, I think Harry Wendelstedt was calling him safe anyway. It looked like with Andres Thomas on the infield side toward home plate on his swipe had missed him. Harry Wendelstedt, who, along with Joe Brinkman in the American League, runs an umpiring school in the offseason down in Florida. See, a great angle by Wendelstedt. I think he called it before the ball popped out.
Well, he never really had it. He didn't lose it as he went to make the tag. He didn't catch it. See, it's loose first. So it's hard to tell what Harry had in mind. But if he played it cleanly, he would have at least had a chance to get Dawson. And now Davis belts one to dead center field. Back goes Blocker to the track for the catch. Dawson tags, and he'll be at
he forgot how many outs. Blocker forgot how many outs there was. Couldn't roll, he held him. I believe either Blocker forgot where Dawson was on the field and forgot about the pass ball, or he lost track of the outs because he was about ready to glide it in and drop the ball, and Russ Nixon say, oh, don't do that. Dawson had an inkling of scoring on a sacrifice fly from second base.
You know how you can tell? Watch when Blocker catches the ball. He rocks back on his heels in kind of a relaxed posture as if to say, that's that. See, there you go. He's starting in.
You don't think there was some outfields yelling from the unload? When you're playing badly, and Russ has seen a lot of young mistakes, defenses hurt them a lot. These kind of silly things happen. Mental lapse that almost cost him.
Palmeiro's 0 for 2 with a walk. And now they're going to put him on intentionally.
Get to Manny Trio.
So Trio comes up. He's 1 for 3. He's singled and then twice flied out. First and third, 2 out. A run already home in the 8th to increase the Cub advantage to 3-0. Blocker almost with a blockhead move. And I guess we've covered every possible variation on his name today.
Well, he's out there now trying to block that last play out and basically just, you know, make a good play this time.
Yes,
the mental
that's
block
right.
is done.
Moving right along to Trio. A ball low and away. This does beat having a real job, doesn't it?
You got it. You're really going on the gravy train after this when you go to Seoul, Korea.
Yeah.
Great food.
You know, if the Olympics hadn't been there, I would have just chosen it as a vacation spot. 1-1. Another souvenir, although Perry and Benedict each take a look. If you've just joined us, Jeff Pico is working on the shutout for the Cubs. We've had strong pitching performances in each game of this series. Schiraldi for a Cub victory on Thursday. Last night, Pete Smith with his 3rd shutout of the year and 2nd in succession. 1 for the Braves, handing Rick Sutcliffe the defeat. And Pico is a couple of innings away from a shutout today for Chicago. Just missed. 2-2 with 2 out and 2 on, and they just concede the stolen base. Palmeiro moving up.
No sense taking a chance throwing the ball away with the 7th hitter up, fouled by the 8th. You got a base to play with now with a veteran catcher and pitcher on the mound. Does make it tougher on your infielders. You remove the force. Second base, and what could be a tough play becomes tougher now. You have to make the long throw across the diamond.
Pop to the right side. Gant goes back. In comes Murphy. Murphy wants it and takes it. Another run, a couple of hits, and 2 men left. Well, the pennant race certainly doesn't turn on the outcome, but it has been an interesting game, which is all we could have hoped for when we came here today.
Well, Jeff Pico had 2 line drives hit off him in the very first inning after a strikeout, but now he had walked anybody, allowed 4 singles, got 2 strikeouts, and he's doing what Dick Polis, pitching coach, wants. Throw strikes, get ahead in the count, and protect the lead. Giving him, as they call it, a quality start.
His 11th start of the season, his only complete game was his first one, the shutout against Cincinnati in his big league debut in late May. The Cubs are trying to finish over 500 for the year. They have several quality players on their roster, and the key now is to put together a solid pitching staff, complete the rotation, solve the big question mark in the bullpen.
And they'd probably like to get one big bat that can get you 3 runs in a hurry to help out. There's Bruce Sutter up now for Russ Nixon, with another home run bat to help out Andre Dawson.
James hits it softly into right, and there is Dawson for the catch. The Cubs believe that, provided they can answer those big questions, that the team they'll put on the field every day is good enough to contend. They know their pitching staff is not a contender's pitching staff right now.
The thing about it, it would look like, you know, with the natures of these two clubs, both relatively young in different areas, that Atlanta would have a better chance to become competitive more quickly because they're in a little bit weaker division. They don't have the Mets in that pitching staff to contend with, or a young up-and-coming Pittsburgh team, Montreal.
Darren Jackson takes care of Benedict. On the other hand, the Cubs, as they're presently constituted, are a much better team than the Braves.
Well, when you start talking about young pitchers, you know, and they've got Maddox, who's struggled since the All-Star break with his 16 wins and has had just 1 win since then. Moyer's there, Lancaster, some of the others. But look at the arms that Atlanta has. Saw Smith yesterday. Glavine gave him a good outing today. Some of the kids we've mentioned throughout this telecast.
And especially if Zane Smith comes back, if his surgery is successful. First pitch swinging, Blocker pops it back and out of play. Well, when you talk about the Cubs, they did, of course, have the division and near trip to the World Series in '84. Their last pennant came in 1945, and their last World Championship in 1908.
There's no question that when Dallas Green, brought in by the Tribune Company, since let go, that he rebuilt with some good people, but primarily by him, a farm system that was really, really in bad shape when he took over.
A bouncing ball to second. Sandberg takes care of it. Since the last time the Cubs won a World Series, Wrigley Field was built, Harry Carey was born, and Halley's Comet has appeared twice. California letting up on the Yankees. They've done no further damage since the second, when they got 9 runs to build that 10-0 lead. Oakland spotted Baltimore 1-0 lead. Now the A's lead 5-1. And a couple of changes for the Braves as we move to the 9th. As you see, Bruce Sutter is the new pitcher. He'll hit in the 8th spot, vacated by Terry Blocker. 0-2. And Lonnie Smith comes into the game. He'll lead off in the bottom of the 9th. And Deion James moves from left to center with Blocker out of the game.
Bruce Sutter feels he's throwing about as hard as he did in his heyday with the Cubs and when Atlanta got him initially. Still relies on that split-fingered fastball. Doesn't look like he's been able to generate the arm speed after missing almost 2 complete years with the surgery.
In the air to very deep left. Back goes Lonnie Smith right in front of the fence for the catch.
You know, we've seen, what, at least 3 balls today. Jody Davis, this last one. Dawson's last year with the same swings with last year's baseball. We're out of here in this launching pad. It's just not the same as Dale Murphy and Dawson told us before the game. You know, another thing about it, with what people feel and talk to pitching coach and pitchers, with the higher seams on the ball has more movement in the strike zone.
Oberkfell over to Perry. And that takes care of Pico, whose mind is more on pitching in the bottom of the 9th than hitting in the top half of it. He's going to have a 3-0 lead to work with. And in the bottom half of the inning, the scheduled hitters are Lonnie Smith, Ron Gant, and Ken Oberkfell. Dunston's wearing an 0-for-4 collar. And there's a base hit for him.
That looked like the forkball. Well, you see the aggressive nature of Sean Dunston about almost halfway down to second in case the ball was bobbled by Lonnie Smith. But that forkball doesn't seem to have quite as much depth as it did, and Sutter was in his heyday. He kind of stayed right there.
And remember, when he was in his heyday with the Cubs and with the Cardinals, he was the only guy who could throw it effectively. So you never saw it except when looking at him, and there was no time to adjust to it because he'd only go through the batting order once as a late-inning reliever.
And that's why, and Bruce said that, even before his surgery, he felt that when he was losing a little of the effectiveness, that hitters were seeing more of that pitch, and that's why he never wanted to show anybody how to throw it. And Roger Craig started showing everybody until Al Roden said, "You better stop." You show it to our pitchers and not theirs. There have been guys who've wanted to pay Roger Craig to teach that pitch. Suter in the minor leagues, of course, had the arm problem. The late Freddie Martin was his minor league roving pitching coach, taught him to pitch. And he would embarrass outstanding hitters that pitch. They'd swing at grounders. I mean, the ball would start belt high, and it'd be bouncing. And I mean, almost worse than a knuckleball pitcher. Atrocious swings they have at it.
And all the fans watching at home from the center field camera would call those radio talk shows and say, why don't they just lay off? It's a ball every time. And it sounded so much easier than it looked when you were actually standing up there. One and two to Sandberg, who has a double and a single in 4 trips.
I still like the term that Mike Marshall, former great relief pitcher, used when he took high-speed photos of Suter's delivery. He called it a one-fingered screwball, because the last finger was the middle finger of the thumb side that it rolled off and dropped and had a screwball action. When you looked at that high-speed film, that's exactly what it was. You'd stop action, there it would go. Turn that hand over a little bit and roll off and just dart away from left-handed hitters.
Every time I look at Sandberg, I can't help but think sometime during the day as we broadcast a Cub game of the game in June of 1984, the game that Cub fans refer to now quite simply as the Sandberg game. Out of play once again. That was his MVP season, and that was probably the game against the Cardinals when he had 5 hits and 2 late inning, 9th and 10th inning, game-tying home runs off the man he's facing now, Bruce Suter. Hit one in the 9th and another one with 2 out in the 10th to tie the game. The Cubs eventually won it 12-11 in extra innings, and that was the game that marked him as the front runner for the MVP award. The runner is going, and Dunston steals it.
The same day that Willie McGee had that big day, had 5 hits, as I recall. Same with me. I woke up about 3:21 a.m. this morning at a start and thought about that same home run at least once a day.
You are obviously a demented man, beyond the reach of even your best intended friends.
Which you used to be.
No, really, that game was such a classic.
It really was.
Beautiful day at Wrigley Field. 2 great teams with tremendous tradition, the Cards and Cubs.
That was BL, too, before lights.
Yeah. Forgive me for name dropping here.
Never.
Ahmad Rashad is a pal of both of ours, and he's a close friend of Bill Murray's. Murray was in Europe filming a movie when that game was played, and he's such an avid Cub fan. He called Ahmad and he said, can you get a tape of that game for me? Here comes the 2-2 pitch. The next thing I know, the doorbell rings at my apartment in New York, and there's Ahmad standing there with Bill Murray, who looked like a refugee from who knows where. I mean, Billy had a wool cap over his head and some disheveled clothing.
Hey, it could have been Harry Carey who was standing there.
It was Bill Murray, trust me. And they walk into the apartment, and it was the middle of November, and we popped the tape on the machine, and Murray sat there and watched those Sandberg homers off Suter as delighted as a little kid. This one is deep. This is another one. Assuming he's not watching at Mom and Dad's house in Chicago, the tape will be Federal Express to Mr. Murray in the morning.
Sans sound. Hey, there's an old expression in baseball, don't pitch a country boy in his eyes. This ball looked like it was in and up in his eyes, and one of those long line drives. 1 to strike. It's too high, a little bit inside, and Sandberg certainly got his hip into it.
Behind the bag, Perry. Fair ball, and that takes care of Grace, but Pico's got a lot of breathing room now. Next time Sandberg sees Suter, he's going to have to call him cousin. Off what we've seen, he owns the guy. Lonnie Smith will lead it off in the last of the ninth. Let's flash back to October of 1982. Brewers and Cardinals in the World Series. Lonnie's at third base, and he's going to steal home off Don Sutton, or at least try to. He's called out, but you be the judge. Here he comes. Great jump. Ted Simmons with the tag. Watch this. Not only does Smith's hand appear to touch the plate, but Simmons, after the tag, juggles the ball, and he's trying to regain control, but nonetheless, Smith was called out. The Cardinals won the World Series anyway, and now as paths intertwine in baseball, Simmons and Smith find themselves as teammates in Atlanta.
If there's anybody who's got the expertise and the knowledge of the game and how to handle people, it's Ted Simmons. I think he's great managerial timber if he wants to do it.
Pico looking to put the finishing touches on a shutout. This will be the first out on the ninth. Palmeiro wants it and has it. So much for Lonnie Smith, who has the distinction of playing for 3 world champions in 3 different cities in this decade. The Phillies in 1980, the Cards in 82, and then for Kansas City when they beat the Cardinals in 85. Had to go down to the minors to salvage his career after the Royals cut him loose. Had a big first half of the season at Richmond in the International League, and now the Braves have brought him back to the bigs. Here's Gant. First pitch swinging, roll it to short. Dunston barely got him. Gant was really digging down the line, but he's out by half a step.
And again, Dunston stayed under control. I mean, this guy might have the best arm in baseball, and I include Gooden and Clemens. And watch, he just looks it into his glove. So all you have to do is just barely get him with his speed, and he didn't overthrow it and take a chance of it going wild. And a very dramatic call by Oshkosh, Wisconsin's own Dutch Renner. Love to watch him umpire, especially love to listen to him umpire, especially when he's got on plate.
Pico bearing down.
You know, when a guy doesn't strike out a lot during the course of a ball game and really doesn't do things dramatically, I mean, he is pitching with his change of speed and his location and the movement on the ball. Just an outstanding ball game, and it goes overlooked when you got a guy that isn't overpowering people. He's had him fooled on the end of the bat, on the fists, had him out on the front foot, caught him behind with the bat.
He's retired 13 in a row and hasn't allowed a hit since the 5th. And now he's 1 strike away. The Braves have had only 1 multiple hit inning against him. Benedict and Blocker singled to start the 3rd, but he got out of that.
You know, Don Zimmer remembered him when they had an injury earlier in the year, and Jimmy Fry, and we told you before that Pico as a non-roster player looked good. And Fry said, who should we bring up? We got a problem. We can't make a trade. And Zimmer said, remember that kid who kept the ball down, changed speeds, and threw a lot of strikes? He said, Jeff Pico. He said, I want him. And it's paying dividends today.
A lot of Cub fans in the crowd, so there's some noise accompanying the effort by Pico here for his 2nd complete game and 2nd big league shutout. That one drifts foul. Well hit by Oberkfell. In right field, Andre Dawson a few steps back, and that's it. Pico retires the last 14 men. Through 94 pitches in going the distance on a 4-hit shutout. His record is 5-6. Tom Glavine, who didn't pitch that badly, slips to 5-15. In addition, Pico gets what is technically the game-winning RBI because his groundout brought home the game's first run in the 2nd inning. 5-0 Cubs. They move a game over 500 for the season, and we'll return to Atlanta in just a minute.
Major League Baseball Game of the Week has been brought to you by Miller High Life, brewed to be smooth, never bitter. Takes time to make, time to enjoy. Miller High Life. By Buick and your Buick dealer, the great American road belongs to Buick. And by Thompson's Water Seal Exterior Stain, beauty that lasts at last. This week's NBC Miller Lite Player of the Game is Jeff Pico. Miller Lite is happy to present a check for $1,000 in his name to the National Multiple Sclerosis Society. We'll have some closing comments. We'll try and get an interview for you as we wrap things up in just a moment. We'll be back after these messages from your local station. And, of course, in talking about that race in the National League East, about a week or so ago, the Pirates had gotten to within 3.5, while the Mets were struggling in San Diego. But Pittsburgh has had troubles of their own the past week or so, and the Mets righted themselves with a sweep against the Dodgers and then a win last night behind Sid Fernandez at home against the Giants. So their lead has gone to 6.5 over the Pirates with a little more than a month remaining, and Pittsburgh has only 4 games left head-to-head against New York, so the Mets look good.
Not taking anything away from Pittsburgh or the charge Montreal went, but I really thought that the Mets with that pitching and even guys having off years were going to have, well, they're going to run away with it right from the start. They've been wire to wire. My friend, bon voyage to you. If you weren't so ugly, I'd give you a kiss goodbye as you head off for Seoul, but have a good time over there, will you, pal?
Really, the next time that notion occurs to you, just refrain under all circumstances. Let's check the rest of the scoreboard. California has the lead now at 12-0 over the Yankees. And Oakland in front of Baltimore, 5-1 in the 6th. The executive producer of NBC Sports is Michael Weissman. The coordinating producer of NBC's baseball is Harry Coyle. Today's game was produced by David Neal, directed by Bucky Gunts. Pre-game produced by Les Dennis. Pre-game directed by Andy Rosenberg. Technical director Rick Rayford. Tomorrow on Sports World, a preview of next month's Summer Olympics gymnastics competition. America's best compete in the individual event finals in the U.S. Gymnastics Championships. For Tony Kubek and Statman Steve Horn, I'm Bob Costas. So long, everybody.